Hi, I'm Brad Power, and this is the Cancer Patient Lab. This is our weekly webinar series. Today, we're honored to have with us Robb Owen, a member of the community, a citizen scientist who's done a lot of interesting analysis. And the thing he's going to be talking about today is how he's managed to use ChatGPT and other research, online research tools to help guide not only himself, but others in their care decisions. I want to cover a few housekeeping things before we get started. The standard big three are, this is for information purposes only. This is not medical advice. We try to arm our patients with information they can take to their medical team. Second, everything you say can and will be used against you. That is, this is a public forum. Everything will be made public. If you're concerned about that, change your name, hide your image, and don't say anything. And finally, we are a patient-led nonprofit, of all volunteer organization, and we would welcome any contributions that you would make, which you can do at thecancerpatientlab.org, and there's a donate button. And it's the end of year, so like this is the giving season. With that, I'll turn it over to Robb.
There's this guy who's using ChatGPT to come up with.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Heard a question there briefly. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. What I'm going to do is when I get into start sharing the report or the analysis or presentation, I'm going to stop partway through and then I'm going to field some questions. I've got a long presentation, and if we don't get through the whole thing, that's fine. But I want to answer questions as we go. So, Brad, if you want to ask questions on chat, and then when I find a stopping point, I'll have you kind of address those. Does that sound good?
Yeah, we try to emphasize interaction. So everyone is encouraged to either submit questions through chat or use the raise hand feature, and then I'll moderate and call on you.
All right, great. All right, here we go. All right, so what we're talking about today is how to use AI to develop engaged patient complementary cancer treatments. So the question becomes, can a patient use AI to develop a tailored complementary cancer plan? Of course they can. But there are some challenges that come with that. First off is deciding which cancer theory that you want to pursue when asking the questions. And then also the next challenge becomes correct prompt engineering to leverage the effectiveness of AI in building a complementary plan. So as you can see on this page, I've put several different cancer theory that are currently used or utilized by the conventional medical arena, along with some that
Robb, we're still on your title slide. So if you think you're showing us something other than your title slide, then we're not there.
Okay, that is wild. I'm on my third slide. And can you not see?
I'm looking at your title slide.
So title slide. Okay, this is an issue. It says it is sharing.
Yep, it is sharing, but I don't think you're in presentation mode.
Ah, thank you. Where do I get to presentation mode?
Slideshow.
Slideshow. Show presenter. Nope.
Menu bar towards the top.
Okay. It says end slideshow.
Yeah, what we're seeing just says, what we're seeing has a button that says slideshow. So I think you've shared, oh, something moved. There you go. Whatever you did worked to move to the next slide.
Okay, thanks guys. Appreciate that. I'm a little new at this, so bear with me as far as presenting with this. All right, so we'll go back. So we'll start here. Like I said, yes, cancer patients can use it. It becomes a challenge then for whether they, what theory you want to use, and then using correct prompt engineering to leverage artificial intelligence. So looking at all these theories, if you're more into just conventional medicine, you will silo into the somatic theory or the hallmarks of cancer, oncogene theory. If you're looking for more of an engaged complementary solution, you'd want to look more into nutritional mutagenesis or metabolic theory. So that's a decision that you'd want to make up front to drive where your questions would, what questions you would put together to start asking AI. So based off of that, what I did was when I started working with this, I combined or looked at multiple different theories, somatic mutation and nutritional mutagenesis specifically. And it goes into, both are evidence-based, plenty of information, research information to guide analysis and research. So once you've made that decision to follow a path along those lines, it will actually drive where you go to next. So using these together, they're both logic and evidence-based, and there's plenty of support from research literature for both. And then when you start looking to them as a combined effort, it appears that we're having more successful, or that you would have more successful results when trying to manage your cancer on your own or with the help of your oncology team as an engaged patient. So trying to decide which one's the most logical, they're both logical, but it makes more sense to use them together. The interplay of nutrition and genetics in cancer development is there's an awful lot of research and data out there that shows that it is important to understand how that works with your body while you're using conventional treatments. It'll enhance the effectiveness of conventional treatments. You'll feel better, you'll have better outcomes. So when taking this approach, now the next step was which OpenAI or which AI platform would you want to use to do your analysis? And I currently use ChatGPT 4 because it's just a broad base of information to pull research from. There are currently markets or products coming out that are more tailored just to the specific conventional treatment side. And when looking at those, it doesn't give you access as much to the holistic or nutritional side. So once again, it depends on which path you want to take. If you're just looking to go for what's the best immunotherapy or the best conventional chemo or radiation treatment, those would be very useful for that. I believe Tempest is doing that. And I know there's several other people that are working on apps that utilize just that knowledge. If you're looking for something that encompasses a much greater scope, something more broad as ChatGPT would be preferred, I suspect. So that's your next step. Pick the AI source that you're comfortable with based on the knowledge that you're looking for. So once you've done that, then you need to start developing a set of questions to learn about what your cancer type is, what it's doing to you, how to effectively treat it, what the pathology reports mean. And all this is typically foreign to a patient unless you're a part of the medical industry currently. So to dive into learning about that, there's very useful components of AI that'll help translate to more layman's terms what the mutation is, what the carcinogens might have been, what your conventional standard of care options are, what does your pathology report, what's the terminology mean? Now, for people like Alan, it's second nature. He knows this already, but for most of us, it was something that we had to learn and get familiar with. So this is the biggest use for conventional treatments, just learning what's going on with your system, how to identify and make sense of the reports that you're giving. It's an overwhelming time when you're going through cancer, and using a tool for that is, I would think, much of a relief for many people. So if you're going to follow just a conventional treatment plan, this is kind of where it would stop. You would look through all these components. You could use AI to search clinical trials, search for immunotherapies. You could use it to see the effectiveness, what kind of side effects you may have, what suggested routines to go through to make them more successful along those lines. So if this is the only way that you want to go, then the next couple of slides may not be of much interest to you. When we get into these, now you're starting, if you're looking at incorporating a more nutritional side along with your conventional, you want to start looking into holistic measures. How does stress influence the immune system and its role in resolving your cancer, and how it can exacerbate the cancer that you have. You can look at how vitamins and minerals play a role in DNA and RNA synthesis and how that affects your mutation type. You can dive into phytonutrients deficiencies and their role in DNA mutation and the metabolism of your mutation type. You can look at amino acid deficiencies or imbalances and their role in DNA mutation and metabolism. Research into hydration and its role in the immune system and toxic waste removal. Same with physical activity, sleep. And then finally, what diet would be best suited for the type of cancer that you have, either a balanced whole food diet versus fad diets, fasting, or whatnot. So if you choose to go down that path, there's a wealth of information out there to review. Then you can go deeper into the analysis. And you can do this on both, I suspect, see how your conventional treatment or nutrition plays a role in oxidative stress, aerobic glycolysis, oxidative phosphorylation. Look into how Mother Nature and its role in hormone release, the role of dopamine receptor 2s, serotonin, histamine, cholinergic acids, neurokinin 1, all of these and how they work with your cancer mutation, the variant of it, the metabolism of your body, and then finally, estrogen and progesterone if they're involved with your mutation type. So when you start adding,
Rob, could I
Sure.
just ask a quick question about, you're focusing a lot on the content side of things, but you haven't talked about how you're using ChatGPT, and maybe you're going to get into that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically laying the groundwork. You have to lay the groundwork before you start getting into these are basically some organizational skills that you need in advance of diving in. So mapping out a set of questions to get yourself prepared to actually use AI effectively. So this is basically setting that groundwork for you. So when you move into, and the timing was perfect, Brad, artificial intelligence benefits. It's simple, effective. It does get more complex when you start using targeted prompt engineering. It will reduce the amount of research and time versus conventional or previous research methods where you'd have to look up targeted studies and sift through the data that's in those. It has a vast database of scientific research and citations and references, and it explains complex terminology well. So now that you've made up your set of questions, what do you do next? We'll start with the simple things. Just ask the AI simple questions. Ask it to explain what the cancer type you have and how it affects your body. Ease yourself into it. Copy and paste your pathology report and ask it to translate it for you. Use it for definition of words you don't understand. It's very, very good at giving you great information in that regard. And these are the simple ways to go into it first. And this is kind of easing into how you use the AI. And this maybe many people on here are more advanced than where I'm at on this, but that would be the steps to go into it. So the depth of research and how to utilize it, well, it depends on the mutation theory that you follow. The more theories you combine, the more research needed. Understanding the research, that's patient dependent. understanding the immune system, metabolism, cancer biology. It's extremely complex to grasp, even in simple terms, but AI can assist you to an extent. You can also use AI as a great tool to organize the data that you're going to pull from this and then paste it into Word documents that you can share with your medical team. So going into this you have your set of questions, and this is kind of the organization side still. Conventional treatment, you can look for standard of care, immunotherapy, clinical trials, palliative. Nutrition, which diet, fasting, does diet even matter? Supplements, nutritional supplements, vitamins, repurposed drugs, and digestive enzymes. These are all items that you'd want to dive into and look at depending on the path that you want to take for your research. So what will you find? You'll find plenty of technical studies. They'll be very, very difficult to understand, but the AI will translate it very well for you. Opinion pieces, you're going to want to look at who's writing it and how it benefits them. And final one is scams. They come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. Some shroud themselves in pseudoscience. Some are fads, and others are just dangerous. And aside from the level of danger to your cancer is the most challenging. AI can help you to an extent. A lot of that, though, has to come from intuition and digging deeper into exactly what is trying to be sold to you. So challenges that you're going to face. Remember, we are getting into the how to ask the questions, but I want to go through some of the things that you'll run into when using this and with a medical team. You'll run into elitism bias at times. When an engaged patient puts together a report and brings it into their oncology team, you will struggle at times with getting them to take serious what you're bringing in. And it's for a multitude of reasons. And then there's also confirmation bias. You may be so intent on trying to find something that works for what you want that you may it may warp your vision of the effectiveness of what's going on. So these are things that you will be confronted with, and you have to monitor while you're going through your analysis. So you can use AI to get into researching all these different treatments. You can set up a table for what's convenient, inconvenient, and work through that. You can see that there's a affordable to expensive, different versions of convenient or inconvenient, and all of these different methods fall into different portions or different parts of this graph. So once again, that becomes a tool that when you research these, it'll fall into, then you just have to make a decision on which direction is best for you. So getting into sample queries and how to actually use this now. For my case, I was a stage 4 head and neck squamous cell carcinoma. So you can ask, what are conventional treatments available for this? And it'll give you a very broad conclusion, as you can see on the right side. There's a multitude of approaches: surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, or targeted therapy. So now, once you have that information, you can go in and ask questions. Okay, what specific chemotherapies are used? In my case, it was cisplatin. And then you can, if you want, and it's basically asking simple questions like this. And that'll give you very general information using AI. And if that's what you're looking for, that's great. If you want to get further into the analysis, then you just have to, and this is the type of information that you'll be getting. It'll go into all different types of surgery, radiation, chemo. And then if you want to look further into that, like mine was cisplatin, I could dive further into that. So this is a sample of what you would see putting in a generic question. I'm going to stop there for a second. What questions do we have right now?
Again, you can use the raise hand feature or use the chat. While we're waiting, I'll just ask a question. How would you kind of sequence? I mean, I think most people would be familiar with Google search, so they can know how to do that. how is it different with AI? Does it remember previous questions, and are you
Yes, it
going
does.
through like a series of iterations? Like I asked this question, like you would like this cisplatin. Okay, chemotherapy, now cisplatin, now side effects, whatever. Are you going through kind of a? Can you give sort of a hypothetical example about how you go through a series of questions with ChatGPT that you wouldn't do if you were just doing Google search?
Exactly. And you're correct, Brad. It does learn from what you're doing, and it'll follow and later in the slide, I do get into a very specific case of where following one thing, you can just keep diving farther and farther down. So with cisplatin, yeah, it would tell you, and I do, and later in the report, it shows a little bit about that, but it'll give you what it targets, how it targets DNA damage, and then you can take that a step further. If you've learned your signaling pathways and growth factors, you can ask it direct questions related to how does it target those, or how does it affect those. And the deeper you dive, the more specific information that you get. So these are all general questions right off the bat, and you can stop there if you want, but it may not give you as much information that would be as beneficial to you. So it basically is a tiered process, starting with a general question. Then it gives you, when you look through this list of, surgery, radiation, there may be something that jumps out at you. Okay, or do you want to do proton radiation, or do you want to do EBRT? If those are a subset of what would be part of your treatment, well, then you can look at each of those and ask, okay, what's the effect of this? What does this do to my type of cancer? And just keep breaking it down step by step. And then
Okay.
with the AI, you're correct. It builds a database off of what the questions you were asking, and it actually refines itself to, once it sees that you're targeting in on very specific things, it'll be more refined in the responses to those.
Okay. Roger's up next with a question.
Yeah.
Hey, Roger.
The question, and I'll tell you why I ask. I guess the question, I'm wondering how well AI can go into things like PubMed documents. And the reason I ask is I've been using it a few times, and I think it's great for like just explaining, all this medical language, what a path report means, and in plain English, and what these terms mean. But I think the risk here is that someone might rely on this a little too much, and it won't give you a complete answer. And I've had that happen where I've asked Copilot or ChatGPT a question, and the answer that came back, it wasn't the complete answer that I think a human might have. And while you were presenting, I happened to listen to a podcast on this morning. So I typed, gee, does exercise stop metastasis? And I got a very short answer back. It says, well, there's studies that show that it does. It reduces it because it increases glucose consumption. And then it basically stops. And, there's like a dozen different pathways and a dozen different, and it didn't even hit the most important one, which is mechanical stress. And I think somebody would read an answer like that, and they might, and there's 3 studies that you will find on PubMed that say that. And someone might read an answer like that and say, oh, that doesn't sound like it's that big a benefit. And I fear, and that's what I fear about AI. It's only as good as the data that gets fed into it. And that's why I come back to my question. Where is it getting its data? Is it reading the same PubMed studies that I am? And if it is, why isn't it giving me the same answers that I come to?
Because of the questions that this is what we'll see further into this presentation. If you ask a very general question, it's going to give you a very general answer. Now, specifically asking questions about how would physical exercise affect a certain portion of the metabolism, or certain signaling pathways, or getting into, this is where learning about your type of cancer and everything associated with it gives you the tools to ask the right questions. When you start doing something very generic, there's just too much information out there for it to give you a detailed report down to the level of analysis that you're looking for. So you have to break down the questions into very, very targeted questions that specifically address certain components. And it's time consuming to do this. If you want to get the information fully that you want, it takes time to break down each one of these and keep diving in on the questions. And then ultimately, I suspect you will find the responses that you're looking for. Now, as far as sources, this OpenAI, and it also depends on which databases are available to the AI that you're using. And I believe they work out contractual agreements with certain sources and whatnot. So finding one that has the most broad content available for research is a big key. That's why I was talking earlier about picking which AI is going to make the most sense for the research you want to do.
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Next question is from Elaine.
Yeah, hi, Rob. I was
Yeah.
wondering, you talked about somatic and nutritional therapies. So if you wanted to steer ChatGPT down that directional path, would you preface it or have your starting question be, somatic theory for cancer ABC, or how would you do that? How do you incorporate that? Thank you.
You're welcome. So basically, if you're gonna drive down a nutritional path, you're gonna want to lead with questions talking about nutrition and its relevance to your specific cancer type and the specific mutations related to it. That's some of the analysis that I'm doing now for the cancer coaching that I'm doing and building protocols to help people. I look at it solely from that perspective. And we're going to get into that a little further into the report, and I'll show you kind of how that goes. So when you're looking at the specific mutation and the variant of it, and then you ask us very specific questions of which vitamin, mineral, amino acid, or phytonutrient deficiency or imbalance might drive that mutation. That's where you start getting into the specifics on how nutrition or these side, these other, how stress would affect your hydration, sleep deprivation, how all of these specifically affect that one type of cancer with its variants. And it'll dive into very, very detailed information onto how that works, but you have to drive it that direction.
Okay.
So you have to start from a starting point where it's a very broader, you have to let it know that you're just looking for nutrition. And that's the best way to do it.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There are
Anything
a couple
else
of
right now?
questions. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Let me read them.
Okay.
Two from Helen and one from David. I'm terrified to see some people in my cancer groups blindly using ChatGPT as if it were information cast in stone. They are new to the platform and are overly impressed with the smart-looking results. I was told in a workshop that ChatGPT should be treated more like an intern and not a CEO, that it can hallucinate, and that it has gotten firms and people into legal trouble. How do we avoid these traps, and how do we know what to believe?
And that's a great question. And I agree with you 100%. If you don't have a pretty strong grasp of your type of cancer or the immune system, the biology of it, the growth factors and signaling pathways associated with it, I can see it easily, taking you to a path that could be less than perfect. If you're asking too general questions, you're going to get too general of answers. And so that the challenge, and I see actually a burgeoning market for a intermediary or a group of people that understand how to use AI, plus understand that portion of cancer biology to be able to use it more effectively than just a layman trying to get in and look at these and surmising certain things that may not actually be there. So it's going to be a challenge. This is so new that we're going to run into a lot of this, I suspect.
Next question, is the free version of ChatGPT as updated as the paid version?
I do not believe so. I use the paid version for mine. It was last updated in October of last year.
Okay. from David, how is the internal consistency? If I ask the same question twice, will I get the same answer?
Yes, it is fairly consistent, asking the exact same question. It may refine it slightly, but in general, the answers are identical.
Elaine, your hand is still raised. Do you had another question, or was that just from before?
No, sorry, from before.
Back to you, Rob.
All right. So now that we've looked at a simple sample query on conventional treatments, you can, if you're going to start using the holistic side along with clinical measures, this is kind of another tool that you can use AI to help you gauge your progress. And once again, this takes an awful lot of intuition and understanding of what you're working with to make these decisions. And not everybody, I think, has the faculties or necessarily to be able to fully do this. But if you do, this is how I would approach doing it. So you look at the holistic measures. That's basically just how you feel, the emotional side, psychological, social, spiritual, physical, all these aspects. You can use AI to actually give you guidance or feedback when you input those terms. It'll give you a snapshot of what it, based on research, how that appears to be relevant to your situation. Clinical measures. You can input whatever data your doctors are giving you and collecting and use that as tools to gauge your progress. Same with diagnostics. So all these things can be input and then give you feedback that gives you an idea, okay, are things going well or are things going bad? So how to incorporate those or how to use those effectively is the next interesting challenge. So here's some sample questions. For holistic measures, a good energy, good appetite, no nausea, a little fatigue, a good indicator that my stage 4 cancer chemoradiotherapy was going well. And it gives you a pretty generic answer. This is the conclusion. Yeah. It suggests I was responding well to the chemoradiotherapy. Things are looking good, but I need to keep engaged with my healthcare team. Like, all right, that was a reasonable assessment. So falling into the next set, and it gives you the whole, once again, it'll give you a whole set. Now, when you ask for questions like this, you can actually ask it to give you the whatever references and citations. That could be a part of your prompt. If you want to get into actually look at the specific papers, you can ask it to write it in a format like this, or you can ask it to write it in paragraphs for you, whichever is most comfortable. This style is what I'm most comfortable with, but not everybody is comfortable with this format. So those are other options that you can use it for. You just have to ask it to write it in a specific, or if you had an answer like this, you could actually go back and ask it to rewrite it in paragraph form. So these are the ways you can use AI to get the information that's most comfortable or the easiest for you to consume. So, all right, on to the next. So when you're tracking your diagnostic, now you have these three set of holistic, clinical, and diagnostic measures. For me, I was tracking my white blood cell counts. I was tracking the holistic side. I was getting feedback from my doctors, no palpable signs of tumor. So this depends on how much work you want to go into. Do you want to build graphs to see your progression and whatnot? And that's obviously just levels of detail that each patient will go into. So using this as a diagnostics to help you decide how you're doing, you just have to keep digging deeper and deeper and providing more information. So in this case, my lymphocytes were going down to 1. Well, it's telling me this is not considered a good sign, So yeah, I'm sitting, at that point, oh my goodness, what do I do? The thing is, I felt great and my tumor had resolved. So I had conflicting information. This is not a good sign, but my tumor's gone. I feel wonderful. No side effects from the treatment. So I don't have enough information yet to make a decision. And this is how you would specifically use AI to build your information to make decisions based off of your progress. And once again, here goes into the full detail, and I won't read through it all, but this is just the level of detail it goes into. And then when you go into each one of these, you can break each one of these little sections down and dive further into it. So now that we have that, when you start tracking your clinical measures, okay, that's another portion of this to use AI to help you decide, to define the progress. So you see, I've, on mine, I had a timeline of where I noticed a tumor, everything that I went through, biopsy, diagnosis, started treatment, no tumor, followed through with CT PETs, etc. So the bottom line is the 2023. Those are all information I use to make a decision for myself, being an engaged patient, and how I could utilize this to make a bigger decision about how my treatment was going to proceed. And you can all do this the same. It just takes an awful lot of work to get into it. So now you can ask another very simple question. Are no palpable signs of a tumor a good sign when being treated for stage 4? And should I stop treatment early? Once again, a very generic answer, just off of that specific silo. Yeah, it's positive, but it's essential not to stop treatment early without proper medical advice. Okay. So just looking at that one single thing, I would be more apt to, okay, I'm not going to stop. I've got to follow these conventional methods. And it goes back into, more detail. And like I said, this is where you can dive further in if you choose off of the analysis. So
can we take a break here to ask some questions, Rob?
Absolutely, please.
Sure. David, you want to go with your question?
Yeah. At what point in all of this can you start drilling down for sources? Do you have to go down multiple levels first, or does it give you that option at the first response?
You can have that option at the first response. Now, the more generic the question, the more general your references and resources will be. The further you dive down into very specifics, it'll give you more detailed research or what research there is available out there on that. And then you can, from that, you can go to regular Google search and pull that research information up and review it.
Okay, there are a couple questions from the chat. From Chandra, I think we need a custom chatbot, cancer chat, that is designed and built by trusted cancer entity, for example, the American Cancer Society or Cancer Research Institute. This custom chatbot is pre-trained on authoritative sources with custom prompts and responses, no hallucinations, includes article references in the response, no biases with guardrails, etc. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, that'd be fantastic. I'm all for something like that being built, as long as it encompasses all components of going into treatment. If it just focuses on just a very specific conventional size, I think we're missing out way too much data on how to actually overall help a patient. But yeah, that would be a fantastic a measure to be implemented if it were to be driven. Yes.
And another question from Helen. Rob, are these graph possibilities available only on the paid version?
The graph possibility, these are my custom graphs. I mean, you can build your own using, if you're talking about the graphs. These were not generated by AI, but you can get them to generate graphs for you if you input the correct data. I just plugged a lot of my data into Excel and derived my own.
So the questions for the chat have to be text only?
Correct. From my experience, I've not tried to put in. That's from my experience. It may do, but I've not went down that path.
Back to you, Rob.
All right. So now you can, if you start integrating all these siloed type questions into a broader question about using holistic measures, the clinical data, and all that, your answer changes. It says yes, it reflects a favorable response, and it still should be, the decision should be made with the healthcare team, but it gives you more confidence that yes, this is going well, because obviously before with lymphocytes at 1, that was, oh my goodness, that's bad. Palpable signs of tumor being no palpable signs of the tumor. Okay, that's good, but you have to stay in treatment. When you start adding all this stuff together, it gives you a much broader answer to help you make a better decision. So at that point, you get into, how do I weight this? And once again, this is all personal. Your weighting system may be different than mine, and it all depends on risk tolerance. But this is how I broke it down for mine. The 30%, and then 10% intuition to make a decision. And I chose to stop treatment after 3 weeks, and have just recently hit a year NED. So these are all very individual things, and it just takes using AI will help you be able to make these decisions better in that respect as far as your diagnostics. So I'm not going to go much more in that because that's a very individual component per person. So getting into very specific, we talked earlier about looking at your type of treatment and how it works to resolve the type of cancer you have. A very generic question like this: how does cisplatin work to resolve my type of cancer? And it goes into a very high level view of what it does, just introducing DNA damage. All right. Leading to cell cycle arrest and apoptosis. And you could stop there and go, okay, that's great. I wanted to have more information. So the more I researched in, and like I said, once again, this goes into the details. When I got into it more, I wanted to find out what growth factors and signaling pathways does cisplatin work to inhibit. And these are questions you can ask for your specific type of cancer treatment and the specific type of cancer that you have. And it says, well, it doesn't directly target these, but it may have influence on downstream signaling changes. So it gives you a much broader set of information here. And from this, you can start looking at what it suggests, the P53 pathway, okay, the HR pathway, NER, inflammation signaling. So you can start looking at those specifically and asking questions directly related to those, and it'll dive into greater information. So does cisplatin affect EGFR through the P13K, KT-mTOR signaling? Well, it doesn't target it, but it starts giving you more information about how it may actually interplay with that and have effectiveness. So the farther you dive into this, the more targeted information that it'll give you about the possibilities of it having influence on these. And once again, this takes an awful lot of work, but you keep getting prompts. It keeps telling you information. And then if you want to take each piece of that information and keep following down it, you can get better detail on how your conventional treatment is specifically affecting your cancer tumor. So now going into, this is where we're going to do a real deep dive into like a holistic side that if you ask a general question and you stop, Roger, what you mentioned earlier, you're not going to get the information you need. And it's once again, this is the prompt engineering. Is zinc useful for treating stage 4 head and neck, the type of cancer I had? Well, it says, it really doesn't have much of a role. It's not supported by any clinical evidence at this time. All of this, should be focused specifically on my oncological treatment strategies. If I didn't have an instinct that it had played more of a role after I looked at that, I would have stopped. And I wouldn't have thought, okay, zinc's not important to what I'm doing. And most people probably would. So, and it kind of goes into, different components here, and it goes into some information. So when you start looking at going into the P53 gene mutation. Okay. It mentions it, let's start looking into some of this. So is it useful as a complementary treatment? Well, you start getting more, it dives further into it. And it's all based on how you ask the question. It starts giving you better information. And so that dives further into fibroblasts. Okay. Well, I'd never heard of a fibroblast prior to my cancer. So that was the first thing that popped up. I'm like, well, let's see how zinc interacts with fibroblasts. And this is where your AI is really wonderful. It goes into, what fibroblasts are and their contributions to the microenvironment, and how they're looked at, basically trying to control fibroblasts from differentiating. So when you now you have fibroblasts, it was one of the things that pulled down in your drop-down menu or the analysis. And then you start adding how zinc, and you can use AI to actually ask what fibroblasts are in the context of cancer, and it'll give you this information so you get a better understanding of its role. Then you ask them a question. Okay, now you're diving deeper in. How important is zinc's role in fibroblast function in cancer patients? So, for my first question, when I asked how important is zinc being used for treatment, it didn't seem like it was important at all. When you start diving down into information like this, zinc's essential for proper fibroblast function, and it influences the tumor microenvironment. So this is where asking the right questions, looking for the right signs, whatever the keywords, and following that down will give you the data that is actually beneficial for using holistic measures to help you with your conventional treatments. And you can keep following this. And once again, this takes an awful lot of work because this is just one component out of, I don't know, hundreds of different things. And then you have all the different components of your cancer biology. This is where people just generally using AI are going to struggle to get answers that are useful for them, because putting the effort into using it to its full potential to find information that's relevant specifically to the type of cancer you have and how each component directly affects certain microbiology components or certain cell structures and functions in the system. Not everybody has the patience nor the capability to do all of this. So now
Rob,
we find out.
Rob, can you share some principles then? Because it sounds like one is you put in a lot of work. You just keep iterating and you learn. You're educating yourself. You're iterating back and forth. But it seems like there's some principles here, like more specific questions are better than general questions. Or do you have a set of principles you can derive from what you've learned from working with the tool?
I have, and I've developed for the work that I do for as cancer coaching. I've developed actually a sheet of targeted questions, and it's taken a significant amount of time to develop the targeted type. So, an example would be, just a second. Let's read off some of the targeted questions that we use. Give me a second here. So basically, I'll start off with very targeted questions like what DNA mutations are seen in a specific organ of origin's cancer type. Now, if I'm given the data of from a biopsy that already has the mutation and the point mutations or missense or gene sequencing shifts in it, we can plug that data in specifically. But asking direct questions, what DNA mutations are seen in that specific organ of origin cancer type. Then you go to the next step would be what point mutations, gene sequencing, mutations, missense, transaction mutations that are associated with it. then you can, if you want to try to figure out what caused your cancer, possibly contributed to it, you can ask a direct question: what carcinogens may have initiated that mutation? You can ask it a question on how to mitigate those. And Brad, I think you've seen me. I've done some of this for you, and Elaine, I've done this for you as well. You can start looking into how chronic stress may have played a role in that specific mutation. Very specific questions like that. You have to ask a direct question of your direct cancer type and mutation, and it'll give you very, very good information, especially if you've been training it by asking these other questions up front until you get, so it learns what you're looking for. Sleep deprivation, how it may contribute to initiating the mutation. You can ask it for sleep hygiene techniques. These are all questions that very specific and you have to ask them in relation to just your specific cancer type, its mutation, and its variants. Now, if you go very broad, you say, okay, I've got breast cancer, what DNA mutations are seen in breast cancer? Well, there's so many variants, it's going to give you too broad of an answer, and it's not going to give you the detailed information that you need. So it's diving down to very specific questions about very specific components of your type of cancer that are the most value.
David Plunkett has a question.
Yeah, Rob, can you go back about 3 slides to where fibroblasts first came up? Just to use that as an example.
Absolutely.
There we go. So is this screen one of your construction?
Yeah.
Or is this something that was a generated response that you can now drill down on? In other words, do you have to recompose? Okay, so you don't have to generate a whole new query. You can drill down from what's presented here.
Correct. So I started with fibroblast. It was the first one. I'm like, all right, how does zinc interact with fibroblast? And then once you open that up, it's like, oh my goodness. Later on here a little bit in the presentation, I'll show how zinc and nuclear factor kappa B, how it affects it. And that's how you just keep driving down and down to see the importance. So you do the same thing with lymphocytes and all that.
Right. But the important answer for me is that you're not having to compose new queries manually. You can drill from what's presented in this response and go from there. That helps.
Well, you do have to type in a new query, but you can, so the next question was, what was the role of zinc and fibroblasts? So that would be your next question based off of the data you have here. So it would be the next query, but you have to just ask it that question, specifically on what you want it to look at.
Yeah, you can't just indicate, tell me more about this section.
You could, but it's still that's going to give you too general and you could put it that way. You can say, hey, tell me more about fibroblasts, and it'll give you a more generic thing. Doing more specifics where you want to ask maybe you get something that pops out from that drives you to ask a very specific question. For me, when I saw this, my next specific question, okay, what, zinc and fibroblasts, how do they work? But you're right. You can ask AI to say, okay, tell me more about section 1 fibroblasts, and it'll give you more detail about it. That is correct.
There's a long message here from Kara Mursky, who had to drop off. So she left, and we're almost out of time, but I think this is potentially a good challenging capstone. I feel that it is my responsibility to share caution in this space. While I wholeheartedly agree with patient involvement and advocacy in the cancer plan, AI can be used as a dangerous tool. Cancer care is inherently complex, requiring a nuanced understanding of a patient's unique molecular and clinical profile, something AI cannot fully grasp. Decisions about treatment should be guided by a team of qualified healthcare professionals in collaboration with the patient who integrate the latest research, clinical expertise, the patient-specific factors into their recommendations. While AI may assist in providing general insights, relying on it as a primary decision-making tool could lead to suboptimal or even harmful outcomes. If you do not feel your care team has the bandwidth to support you in incorporating integrative therapy, molecular testing, or clinical trials, you might want to explore options for a second opinion.
And I agree 100% with her. Everything that I utilize with this, I've shared with my oncology team, and what we do for other cancer patients. These are written to be shared with the oncology, because you have to have both components looking at this and making decisions. I agree with her 100%. AI is a tool to help guide you and to give you information. I wouldn't make, well, it depends on your risk level, whether you want to make decisions based off the information that you get from it. I think utilizing a team is the better way to do it. And we've been seeing really good response when these are presented to conventional oncology teams right now, as far as the information that we're providing and how it works for the patient. Just an overall better solution for them. All right. So we went through the fibroblasts, getting into it. I'm almost done with this. So deeper dive into zinc and fibroblasts. It goes into very specific things about extracellular matrix. And so you can keep building down, once you keep getting these sections, you can ask it to drill deeper into it, and you can ask for all the technical data and research related to that, and it'll provide that to you. So it's an extremely useful tool if you learn how to use it correctly. So you can go into your growth factors associated with cancer and drill down specifically to each of these. This is the example with the nuclear factor kappa B, and how zinc is specifically crucial to it. So you ask questions like this. Then it gets into some pretty detailed information, and you just keep driving further and further down to the importance of how each of these works with your type of cancer and how to help treat it better. So, and I'll stop there. So the benefits of using this are significant from my perspective, specifically for the nutrition and health side, stress mitigation, physical activity, hydration, gleaning information there that is not necessarily provided by conventional means. Definitely gives you a much better chance of successful outcomes with your cancer treatment. Any questions? Check the chat here.
I think this is, we've hit the hour. If you don't mind, I'm going to stop recording. Rob, did you have any closing comments you wanted to make?
No, I think I'm good. If you want to use AI, it's a very useful tool, but learning how to use it correctly or for the most benefit takes time. So.